One of the biggest global success stories in Asian pop didn't come from a massive entertainment company, flashy media backing, or industry shortcuts. It came from SB19. Yes, you heard that right. Today, SB19 stands as one of the most successful Asian pop acts on the global stage, and they did it without relying on a powerful label to carry them there. So the real question is, how did they pull it off? What did they have that others didn't? And most importantly, what can artists and creators learn from their journey? These are the exact questions we'll be answering in this video. But before we dive in, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow and lets me know you want more content like this. For the longest time, the music industry has pushed one very clear narrative. If you want to make it big, really big, you need a powerful label behind you. You need massive budgets, non-stop marketing, and the right connections pulling strings behind the scenes. That's just how it works, or so we're told. But SB19 quietly challenged that entire belief. They didn't burst onto the scene with $1 million launch or an army of insiders hyping them up. There was no inherited privilege, no shortcut through doors already wide open. And most importantly, they didn't sit around waiting for someone else to decide they were worthy. Instead, they chose a different path. They sharpened their skills when no one was watching. They planned every move with intention. They studied how the industry worked and then learned how to move around it. And slowly, deliberately, they built something far more powerful than hype, a real community, a fan base that felt involved, valued, and emotionally invested in the journey. That's what truly set them apart. Not luck, not connections, not a massive label safety net, but strategy, discipline, and the courage to bet on themselves. And that's where the real story begins. Now, let's be honest for a moment. Independence only works if the talent is undeniable. You can be independent all you want, but if the skill isn't there, people move on fast. SB19 never relied on looks alone or trendy, disposable hooks. They showed up prepared, live vocals that demanded attention, tight, disciplined synchronization that reflected years of hard work, lyrics they helped write themselves, giving their music authenticity and identity, and performances that felt intentional, not rushed, not random. Nothing about SB19 was accidental. Every step was earned. Every time SB19 stepped onto a stage, it felt earned, like they knew that moment mattered. Because when you don't have a massive label spending millions to push your name, your performance is your marketing. Your stage presence becomes your billboard. Your skill becomes your advertisement. And SB19 understood that from the very beginning. They trained relentlessly, even when no one was watching. They listened to criticism instead of running from it. They adjusted, refined, and leveled up with every opportunity. So when people finally started paying attention, there was no debate left to be had. They didn't just look like they belonged on that stage, they proved it. Another reason SB19 never needed a major label to define them? They already knew exactly who they were. They didn't chase trends or try to sound like a diluted version of whoever was popular at the time. There was no identity crisis, no pretending, no chasing relevance. Instead, they leaned fully into being Filipino, not as a limitation, but as their edge. They blended global pop influences with Filipino storytelling, Filipino values, Filipino emotion, the kind that feels raw, familiar, and deeply human. Their music carried real experiences, real culture, and real heart. And that authenticity came through in every song. And it resonated, not just with fans in the Philippines, but with listeners around the world. Because audiences today are tired of artists who feel manufactured and interchangeable. Polished is fine, but polished without soul doesn't last. Global audiences want honesty. They want voices that sound lived in, grounded and real. And SB19 sounded real. Now here's where the story truly shifts. SB19 rose at a moment when the internet changed the rules of the game. Suddenly, the gatekeepers didn't hold all the power anymore. YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, streaming platforms. These weren't just tools, they were equalizers. SB19 didn't wait for radio spins or TV invitations that might never come. They went straight to the people, straight to the screens and fans' hands. All it took was one performance clip that hit different, one video shared at the right moment, one reaction that made someone stop scrolling and say, "Wait, who are these guys?" And from there, it snowballed. Because in this new era, visibility doesn't come from permission, it comes from connection. Big labels used to decide who got seen and who didn't. Now, attention is earned by showing up, by delivering, by giving people something worth sharing. And SB19 earned every bit of it. Now let's talk about something SB19 has that's just as powerful as money, maybe even more powerful. A'TIN. SB19 didn't just gain fans, they built a community, one that moved with intention and purpose. This wasn't passive support, this was people showing up, organizing, and taking action. Fans hosted streaming parties to push the music further. They coordinated hashtag trends that caught global attention. They rallied together for voting campaigns that helped bring SB19 onto international stages. And when new listeners showed up, curious and unsure, A'TIN was already there, translating content, explaining the story, and sharing the journey. They didn't just consume the music, they amplified it. They defended the group when needed. They corrected misinformation. They stood their ground, not out of blind loyalty, but out of belief in what SB19 represents. A'TIN didn't wait for a major label to do the promotion. They became the promotion. And that kind of support, you can't buy it. You can't manufacture it. No amount of money can replicate it. It only happens when there's real trust, real connection, and a shared sense of purpose. One of the biggest advantages of not being tied to a massive label is creative freedom. SB19 had a voice in everything, from their sound to their lyrics, from the message they wanted to send to the direction they wanted to take as artists. They weren't forced to chase trends that didn't fit them. They weren't rushed into releasing music before it felt ready. Every choice came from intention. That level of control allowed them to grow on their own terms, musically and personally. And here's the thing, audiences can feel that.
When artists truly believe in what they're creating, it shows. The passion, the authenticity, the care. And when that belief is real, listeners start believing too. Going global doesn't mean erasing where you come from, and SB19 proved that in the clearest way possible. They showed the world that you can reach international audiences without pretending to be something you're not. You can speak to global fans while staying deeply rooted in your own culture. You don't have to strip away your identity to be understood. In fact, it can be the very thing that makes you stand out. Their music crossed language barriers because emotion is universal. You don't need to understand every word to feel the passion, the heartache, or the joy in a performance. And their story resonated because it wasn't a manufactured narrative crafted by a marketing team. It was real. It was lived. Every struggle, every breakthrough, every long night of practice, all of it was genuine. That's why global audiences didn't just listen to SB19, they connected. They saw themselves in the story. They felt the authenticity in the music. They recognized that this was more than catchy songs and polished performances. SB19 represented honesty, culture, and heart. And their journey delivers a message that's both simple and revolutionary. You don't need a massive label, a huge budget, or celebrity backing to succeed on the global stage.
What you do need is a combination of things money can't buy. You need skill, forged through relentless practice, late nights, and an unwillingness to settle for good enough. You need vision, a clear understanding of who you are, where you're going, and how you want the world to see you. You need discipline, the grit to keep showing up, refining your craft, and pushing forward when progress feels invisible. You need authenticity, the courage to be real, to own your story, and to create from the heart. And you need community, fans, friends and supporters who don't just cheer from the sidelines, but actively help lift you higher. Labels can amplify success. They can provide stages, airplay, and marketing power, but they can't create success. SB19 proved that. They didn't wait for permission. They didn't wait for doors to open. They built momentum themselves, brick by brick, performance by performance, connection by connection. And by the time the world finally noticed, it was already impossible to ignore them. They had arrived, not because a label said they could, but because they made it happen. SB19 didn't just break into the global scene, they redefined how it can be done. Their story isn't just inspiring, it's a blueprint for artists, for creators, for anyone building something from the ground up. All right, that wraps up today's video. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And let me know in the comments, what do you think is the biggest reason behind SB19's global success? Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.